Hi, this is Kimberly Reuter, business advisor and supply chain expert, and welcome to my podcast, The Morning Mood. We are back with episode 2 of Math Behind the Magic with Steve Haas, where we dive into all of the dollars and cents behind retail and e-commerce and fashion and why, how, and what should you do. Hopefully you learned some stuff from this. If you're a addicted shopper as I am, there's going to be some tips in here on how you can get around full price. But anyway, Steve is here to talk to us today about assortment and how do you know what to buy?
Oh boy, long topic. So it starts, Kim, with kind of who are you as a retailer? And what I mean by that is if I'm Walmart, I'm not going to try to buy Gucci. And if I'm
Right.
and if I'm Nordstrom, I'm not going to carry Dickies. Who's my customer? Who am I trying to serve? And that's as much what aren't I going to buy as what I am going to buy. Because
Hmm.
there's a couple of parts to it. One is, what is my customer looking for? Who is my customer? If I'm at Macy's, they're kind of middle of the road, aspirational, above average demographics, but not luxury. Cool. Now I know who my customer is. What do they want? Well, I'm
Yep.
here to hear the brands. If I surround them shopping with brands they know and like, they feel at home. If I have things that are way out of their reach on the high side or make them feel like they're at Walmart on the low end, suddenly they don't know why they're in my store. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't resonate with them. So I start with kind of who am I serving? And then it gets relatively easy to say, okay, what are if I'm the jeans buyer, what are the 15 brands that kind of fit in that price range and speak to that customer? That's just your starting point at a high point. And it goes, all the way down to really low levels of detail. But kind of who's the field of play is generally the smart starting point for somebody thinking about like, where do I start with an assortment?
Right. So assortment, for people who don't work in e-commerce and in retail, or perhaps are lowly supply chain people who no one ever talks to or shares anything with. So the assortment really, and so I say that jokingly, but I didn't really learn a lot of this until started working at Nordstrom. You're one of the people who taught me a lot about this. Mike Sato is another person who I got to get on this podcast. He taught me a lot about retail. But for people who aren't really in the trenches of it, the assortment really kind of defines the brand. So as we talk about like with Walmart, when you go to Walmart, you are expecting something, right? You are not expecting to pay $250 for a pair of jeans in Walmart. 20 bucks, maybe 40 if we're pushing it. And also the reverse happens if you're walking into Nordstrom, you're going to be real upset if you're looking at $40 jeans or something that you perceive as low value
That's right.
because you're there for something luxurious, something expensive, something very high end. So it works both ways. So the assortment really helps define and back up the brand.
That's right. I mean, there's truly, when you look at the retail landscape, Amazon is the only one who tries to be everything to everything.
This is
Other than
true.
that, there is some level of editing and curation that happens that, to your point, gets down to who's walking into your store and what feels right to them. Um,
Right.
and if you get it right, they feel really at home and connected. And if you get it wrong,
Yes.
it's super polarizing. I mean, if you carry the Nordstrom carrying Dickies, for example, like that's a really polarizing brand where people are like, God, I thought I knew what Nordstrom was, but this doesn't feel right anymore. I mean, you can really jade the opinion that people have about your whole store with a couple of
Yes.
brands that really don't belong there. So I think it's often overlooked as how important it is, but you're exactly right. It defines sort of the customer's sense of who that brand is and whether or not they belong shopping there within that retail.
Yeah. Does it belong for them? And just to take a minute on the Amazon point where you talk about Amazon's really the only company who tries to sell everything. And you're right. But it has limited them in expanding into the luxury space. So if you'll notice, Amazon does not
Oh,
carry the Gucci's and the Chloe and all of the very high ends. If they do, they're secondhand or gray market. They're not selling them directly.
yeah, and I might argue that them carrying Dickies is not why Gucci doesn't sell Amazon. It's
Okay.
more that online is a necessary evil to a Gucci. They would
Mm,
much rather have you in the store understanding the story, the touch, the feel, the workmanship. They do not want a relationship to become transactional. And by that's
transactional.
all and that's all Amazon is. I could buy
That's really good point
I
because yes,
I buy it,
luxury
it gets me.
brands, yeah,
They want the
and it's
experience.
true.
Yeah.
Touch and go,
And Amazon is better at than anyone in the world. But if you're
yeah,
offering an experience and you think that's what makes you special, Amazon is the antithesis of that.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And as a Gucci lover, you touch a Gucci bag, you're it's coming home with you. I'm telling you, there's something definitely
Yep.
different.
Yep.
There's a reason they want you to touch it.
Yep.
um, so yeah, all right. So that's a really good point. I had always associated that they didn't want to do business with Amazon because of the lower price points. But you're right, it's more of a transactional.
Yeah, they're also afraid of what Amazon's going to do to their own prices. Amazon is very good at discounting and algorithms driving pricing and throwing up their hands and saying we didn't do it. That
Yeah.
doesn't work with the luxury brands. It's
No, you
tightly
can't.
controlled. You know,
It's
retail
tightly controlled. It has
shopping
to
began
be.
tightly
Yeah.
controlled. Yes.
Yeah. We have lots of other conversations that are going to come up, but I would, at some point, I'd love to have a conversation with you about this whole Birkin bag craziness that's going on and the fact that you could just buy an exact look like a Birkin bag. And what is it going to do to Birkin bags? But we'll come back to that.
Different day.
All right, so back to assortment.
Right.
So we've established that, kind of what you buy, you're focused on your customer, you want them to feel comfortable when they're in your store, you obviously want them to buy something. So that's kind of the start of assortment.
Yep.
Where do we go next?
So you start by narrowing it down to who you're serving. And now it is, how do I offer them a really good assortment that captures kind of all of their needs? So the classic is, within an assortment, have a good, a better, and a best price point. So you might have,
Okay.
if I'm a Nordstrom buyer buying denim, I might have jeans that start at $80 as my good, 80 to 120 and 120 to 200, I put in the better bucket and 200 above is my best. Cool.
Yeah.
They kind of all speak to the same customer on different days at different times for different occasions. They might want any of those, but none of them fall out of bounds where they're like, what the hell am I doing shopping here? It's a
Mhm.
reasonable cross section that all serves, the left and right of center of who your person is without getting so far out that they feel out of touch. And then,
Yeah.
so that's a price story. Then you try to do the same with looks. And looks is, super subjective depending on the category, but you're going to say if skinny fit and bell bottom and low rise and stonewall, whatever they are across all of those washes and all of those finishes and all those fits, you probably again want a good, better, best. So I don't
Hmm.
go, well, if you want skinny fit, those are all over $200. My
Right.
value conscious customers going, what the hell? What about me over here? So you try to sort of create this grid that says, what are the classifications or fits in this case? And what are the prices? And have I checked all the boxes? And if there are voids, maybe that's okay. Maybe I don't need all three prices in every classification because maybe something's a little more upscale and it's only in better and best. But you don't want to BS yourself into having too many voids in there because usually you're not fully serving your customer if you do.
Right. Got it.
So you sort of try to triangulate price and style, cover as many bases as you can, and then you go to, okay, who is there in the market? Because a lot of times there's, at $80 jeans, there's 8 brands I can buy from. If you're not
Right.
careful, you tend to duplicate yourself really quickly. So now you move to the like, where's the brand heat? What is my customer looking for? What's the one today that the top 2 or 3 brands in every one of those price points that I have to have? Got it. Then is there anything unique that others offer that make my assortment look different, differentiated? Cool. Maybe I add them. But again, I can't be everything to everybody. If I'm at Nordstrom, I don't carry every $200 jean that's out there. There's a lot of them
Right.
I used to carry and I don't carry anymore. And some that I may
Yep.
carry someday when they reach a certain level of coolness. But for
Yep.
me, here's my assortment. And there's others that sit outside it. And you're always watching what they're doing and talking with them and staying engaged. And at some point you may make changes, but if there's hypothetically 75 denim brands that fall into those price points, I might only carry 30 of them. I have to
Right.
make some edits. Otherwise I'm just a sea of sameness and my website starts to look like Amazon if I'm not careful. And as an upscale retailer, curation is part of what the customer expects from you. Costco's the
Yes.
ultimate example of that. Nope. Costco carries Costco and Amazon are opposite ends.
Yep.
And Costco, if pasta sauce, they'll carry 1 or 2 of them. Amazon, if it's got a UPC, they'll buy it.
Yep.
Most retailers fall somewhere in the middle where I got to curate a little bit. I want to be broad enough to capture a lot of people, but not so broad that I try to be everything to everybody.
Right. And so let's talk about curation a little bit because that's an interesting point because, I learned a lot about this working at Nordstrom. So it was interesting for me coming from Amazon, which is we don't care, we just want to sell it. Somebody's going to buy it, we're going to sell it. And then coming to Nordstrom, which was, well, we and Nordstrom's attitude was more, we set the tone. We decide, we not dictate, but strongly suggest what you should be wearing this season versus Amazon is, I don't know, we got it, you can buy it. Just take it. And so there is a different assortment that has to come along with that. And the customer expects it. So even from my own personal experience, when I get frustrated trying to find something, I go back to Nordstrom because I'm like, I know Nordstrom's figured it out for me, or at least done 80% of the work. Is this even a real thing? So let's talk about that a little bit and how valuable that is to the customer.
Well, Nordstrom, there's a select group of retailers, I'd say, Saks, Neiman's, Nordstrom,
Yep.
really cater to a different customer. I mean, and I spent a lot of my career in the men's world.
Mhm.
When shopping for clothes, a man's greatest desire, unless he's really elevated and has a true fashion sense, most guys' greatest desire is to not look stupid. You're probably not going to look stupid walking out of Nordstrom with something that a stylist helped you put together.
This is true.
If
Yeah.
she puts you in a fitting room and says, "Hey, I'm going to bring you some jeans," and I say, "Well, those feel really tight," and she says, "Just got to tell you, the ones you walked in wearing are really, really dated and they look too baggy. And most people are wearing these. Try them. If you don't like them or somebody makes fun of you, I'll take them back. But
Right.
I put these jeans with this shirt and promise you when you walk into casual Friday at work or to a dinner party, you're going to look great." They
Yep.
feel a sense of trust. And the part of it is the curation of the stuff they have is fashion relevant and the
Yes.
people they employ are good at what they do. And
Yeah.
you get that combination together, you can walk in and go, "I don't know what the hell to wear. This is the event I'm going to." And either they put something together that you go, "Oh my God, right away, that seems great to me." Or you just go, "I trust them. Maybe she's right, maybe she's not, but she can do a better job than I am." Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, that curation is really important and finding that
Right.
spot of, I don't refine it too much. So I still look like I have a breadth of offering, but it's
Right.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of customer studies that talk about the difference between making a choice and making a decision. If I give you
Yeah.
three things to choose from, great, I make a choice. When I give you
Yeah.
35, now I've got a decision to make. And oftentimes I just get overwhelmed and think about it later. So it's get
Yep.
a sweet spot, like the three little bears of not too much, not too little, but what's right in the middle where I felt like I had something to pick from, but it wasn't an overwhelming selection.
Yeah. Amazing. Because I mean, the more and more we dig into this, is really the definition of a company, right? This really is what the company you the assortment is almost the manifestation of everything the company stands for.
Yeah, I would say the assortment, the shopping environment, the website, the people,
Yep.
they're all equal parts of it. If you say I put beautiful stores together and have highly trained salespeople and I screw up the assortment, I guess I'd go as far as to say the assortment is probably the most important. I can have a
Me.
bad shopping experience and shitty people. And if I've got a
Yep.
great assortment, people will still find stuff.
People will still come because if they can't get it anywhere else, they'll
Right.
tolerate a little. It's the soup Nazi, right? They'll put up with some bullshit.
Nothing
You know,
said a bad assortment. You
right.
can't overcome a bad assortment. You can overcome other parts of your offering that aren't as good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue supply chain, but anyway, we'll get to that
Or
later.
yeah,
Okay.
well, a lot of prices of admission. There's this retailer belief among buyers that, well, something I bought something, I thought it was gonna be great, and I put it out and it didn't sell. And then, the first week you sort of, okay, I don't know where it was on the floor. And the second week, well, the customer just hasn't found it yet. And I work with somebody at one point, it's like, can we stop bullshitting ourselves? We can bury it in the back wall and they will find good shit and buy it. And we can put it on the front table. And if it's not good, they ain't gonna buy it. So don't rationalize. If the customer hasn't bought it, don't tell me why they haven't bought it. You made a mistake as a buyer, period. Hard stop.
Oh my God.
It's
Such a truth.
yeah.
And I've heard that bullshit before. Yep. I have heard all of those silly stories before and it just doesn't sell. But you're right. If it's a hot product, the customer will find it.
They will find the best product
They will
buried,
find it.
and you can't bury badly enough to destroy a good product. So
Nope.
the
They will look for it.
customer voting is generally really unassailable.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the assortment, how the brands are buying it, how you select your assortment, kind of where you start. So how does it work? Like, okay, so now So, in retail, we have this thing called going to market, right? This was a new term for me that I also learned out there, everybody. And then there's also this other term I'd love for us to talk about, and you can explain it to better than I can, which is a market product, like a market shoe. I had to learn what that is. But anyway, so retailers go to market, which is when you go and visit all the designers
Yep.
and look at their new lines, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's basically for every category. So stay with denim. There will be a fixed number of times a year where all the major brands who all have showrooms either in LA or New York, depending on the product category, you might go to LA to look at denim. And they all have in a fixed window, which is defined as generally called market week, is when they show what is going to be available coming up next. Next isn't tomorrow or next week. Next, in this case, is 6 to 8 months down the road.
Yep.
What they're trying to do is they've spent time designing and curating and doing the same thing within their own assortment that we just talked about and said, okay, great.
Yep.
Here's 30 new jeans I want to offer. They have a sense of what they think is really good, but they haven't really done anything other than sort of kicked it around with their design team and talked about it internally. When they show their retail partners is when they get a sense of, okay, this thing's good because
Okay.
they can love it. And if Nordstrom and four of the retailers go in and say, yeah, I don't see it, doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Vendor can love it all day long. Maybe they'll strong arm a retailer or two into testing it, but they can also have the inverse, which is they think they've got something and the retailers walk in and go, wow, based on what I see selling across other brands, this has all the right attributes to be a big thing. I want to make this huge. So basically, it's just they're testing the waters. They've got a pretty good feel for what's going to fall where, but oftentimes they can be really surprised by it. Where, a buyer will come in and say, yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest item I've got next year. And they kind of viewed it as the middle of the road. Well, okay. Why is that? What is it you see? What else should I, they're trying to learn a lot from feedback from these buyers because at the same
Right.
time, the buyer's looking at your product, they're looking at 12 others.
Oh,
And
right.
you can also walk in and go, yeah, I just got to be honest. We're going to buy a lot less from you next season because your product doesn't look as good as everything else I've just seen. Or
Yeah.
there's this hot new trend. Skinny jeans are in and I don't see skinny jeans in your line. Where are they? Well,
Yeah.
let's see that we don't think they're going to be a big deal. Okay. Well, I'm not going to fight the customer. I'm just not going to
Right.
for you. So
Yeah.
you've either got a choice, which is in the next 5 days, come back with what you can do in skinny jeans, or I'm going to move my dollars elsewhere. So it's a
Okay.
buyers start out with a sort of an idea of a budget, generally based on
Yeah.
history and trend. I think I'm going to buy this amount for this brand. They'll
Yeah.
come out of market week completely different allocations of their budget based on the product they saw. And
Interesting.
a lot of times they'll try to steer a vendor. Gee, we've got these great jeans at $114. And I'm like, well, that's a stupid price. I could do a
Right.
business at this if you can get it to $99. So
Yeah.
oftentimes you're left with sort of like, I've got six balls up in the air. Let's see what they come back with. But you start with a checkbook that is refined based on what you see. And ultimately a week or two later, your assortment for 8 months later is finalized. So buying is often done in big chunks, generally every quarter. So, every 3 months you're going looking 8 months ahead always. And that's sort of the
And what do we
lead time.
think is
Worry
gonna
about going.
happen?
Yeah. It's a fascinating process.
It's a super fascinating process.
Yeah.
So I did not know that you could go to Market Week. Now I'm sure Prada doesn't do this, but or maybe they do. I mean, that you can go and say, "Hey, we looked at your lineup and we're not feeling it," and they'll tweak it.
It depends on who you are. I mean,
Yeah.
I've watched Nordstrom designer shoe buyers sway, the design of Louboutin shoes because that person has that much respect in the market that, hey, I can do this
Wow.
because of this, but if you change it to this, it depends too. It depends on how passionately they believe in the item, whether or not
Yes.
the change I'm asking for is the difference of me buying it or not. But
Yeah.
most importantly, it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
If you're Nordstrom and you walk into a Levi's showroom, or if you're Macy's and walk into a Levi's showroom and say, I need you to do this, you're their biggest customer. They may listen. Where if I'm
They're probably gonna do it.
Levi's and I'm this big a business, they're probably going to go,
Right.
yep, we're going to do what's right for the greatest number of our accounts. So in this case,
Yeah.
retailers and you ain't it. So guess what?
Yeah.
We're making that change.
Yeah.
So
Let me introduce you to our suggestion box.
yeah. So it depends.
Yeah.
Yes, your assumption is right. You have less sway with the premium people. They tend to be
Mhm.
more about you don't understand our image. Our image and our image is what's most important. They're
Yeah.
they're way less focused on sellability or commercial appeal. They
Right.
would rather have a bad looking handbag that they think is in keeping with their line than something that doesn't match what they think their ethos is, but it sells.
Oh,
Yeah, not
trust.
super frustrating thing as a retailer, but it's true.
We've seen all of those. That's that's where Nordstrom Rack started. But yeah. So excellent conversation about assortment. Anything you want to leave us with before we sign off on today's episode?
Other thing we didn't talk about was how it's evolved versus in stores versus online.
Oh
Um,
yes.
I think,
Yes, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to have a separate conversation about how buying has evolved from regional and all that, but
yeah,
that'll be another episode.
yeah,
Yeah, let's talk about
yeah,
e-commerce in store.
yeah. I mean, when I got to Nordstrom in 2012, there was a huge push to get the online assortment to be as big as what was in stores. They called it getting to parity. And there was all sorts of
Oh, I
reporting.
remember
You
this.
were bad,
Yeah.
you were 60%, which meant if you had 100 items in the store, you only had 60 online.
Yeah.
Well, it took us, and that was the days when it was hard to get brands to want to be online. It's not the,
True.
we're not going to screw up our pricing. We're not going to just
Yep.
the market. It's just another way that we think our customers are shopping. And
Mhm.
pretty quickly, we not only got to parity, but then it was off and running. Now I would purely speculate, but I would estimate the online assortment to be at least 10x the store assortment for most retailers, if not more, because there's
I would
lots of
agree.
things that everything in stores is online. And now
Yeah.
starts the game of what else do I have? And it can
What else can I have?
a lot more of brands I buy that I can't carry in stores. It can be a lot of brands that I don't even put in stores, sizes, colors, you name it. It just
Sizes,
exploded
colors.
because
Yeah.
I don't have to fit it into a store. I
Yeah.
shove a Pikmin into a warehouse and say I offer it, and I may not even
Yeah.
own it. I don't even
Yeah.
have half the stuff that's on my website.
You can drop ship it.
The brand owns it for me and I can offer it to my customers. So, there's lots of trade-offs from an assortment perspective to doing that. But the ability to break down the walls of what fits in the box of my selling floor really it was like the Berlin Wall coming down. Suddenly we could offer a whole bunch of things that the customer might want, but not enough of them to warrant carrying in the store every day.
Yeah. And you're right. It was interesting because the original Nordstrom.com was completely separate from Nordstrom, the retail store. And I think I joined Nordstrom right around towards the end of parody. I remember people talking about it. But the original N.com was like no moves. It was completely off brand. They didn't carry any of the none of the big designers wanted to be on the website or be online at the time. So it was this totally different thing, had different buyers, different customer service. It was like a different business.
Yeah, the breakthrough, yes, everything you said is true. The logic was, well, first of all, structurally, you're right. There, for my denim example, there was a denim store buyer and a denim e-commerce buyer. The logic was we're serving different customers. We need to have a unique lens that meets the needs of each. Pretty quickly realized that's BS, that it is your same, the overlap of online and stores is like 85
Yeah.
plus percent. And
Yeah.
we had these divergent things that our customer who, on one day wants to drive to the mall and shop through it, and on another sits on the couch on her iPad, and she's like, "Who the hell is this? This isn't the Star."
Yeah.
But really quickly, we realized that two things happened. First of all, we were sort of fighting ourselves by, we'd have two different buyers going to the same vendor asking for different things and all that. And that was like
Oh, yeah.
that's like a Dilbert cartoon. But then once we got away with that, we realized that it's the same customer and you should have the best of the best in stores. But I have a
Yes.
view of the whole playing field and I take that as my base and I expand there. And the additional part becomes my, online only offering. But there's 100% overlap of stores and online, and then there's just more online. So
Yeah.
it's evolved tremendously and really all in ways that benefit the customer.
Oh,
I think
totally.
retailers didn't know what the hell they had in the beginning. There was a school of thought and there was data to support that different people want different things on different times online. That didn't mean
Yeah.
you have different assortments. It just meant you should, sort of customize them in a separate way. But, data gets pretty compelling and customer feedback is really easy now to say, well, obviously you only have one buyer, but didn't know back then and never did the best they could. But it was moving
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah. But I mean, but that was pretty common for back then. Like it was just a different, it's before we really, I think luxury really embraced e-commerce. I think that was the last holdout was luxury fashion. I feel like the last to kind of embrace the luxury or the online experience. And they're doing it now.
They're kicking and screaming, but there's just too much volume to deny it now.
Yeah. They can't turn it down.
Yep.
All right. Another great conversation about the magic or the math behind the magic. We were getting into it on how retail and e-commerce really works with the expert on all things buying and finance for retail, Steve Haas. Thank you for being here with us. And we will be back again next month with another episode. Anything you want to leave us with before we sign off?
No, I think that's a good conversation. It's one of those where assortment and all that, I can talk for days on. So I know we got some other topics we'll tackle in future episodes.
We will. All right. Thank you for being here.